Hi everyone, my name is Vince Gelman. Thank you so much for visiting my channel. I'm really grateful that you are watching this video, and I want to give you something, a unique perspective on what's happening in the world that is trauma informed, and you may relate to it. You may relate to what I'm saying on a personal level. But it's unique because I honestly haven't heard anyone else talk about it. So I feel really called to share it with you. I was actually riding my bike today, and I just felt this fierce energy come over me, and like I have to share this. Um, so I'm hoping that it is of service to you. So I'm going to provide a little bit of context at the beginning, and then I'm going to weave that context into the pandemic and everything, or a lot of things that are going on around that. Um, so some of you may know that I'm a healer. I run a practice. I've logged thousands of hours. So I have lots of experience working with clients. I absolutely love what I do. I was a somatic therapist. I was registered. I closed that down, that practice. I was a breath worker, so I helped people heal using the power of breath, and I stopped doing that. And I did other kinds of healing work, and I closed all that. And now what I do is I heal people with starlight. I transmit starlight to people across the world. But the reason why I'm saying this to you is because I have a lot of experience working with people, and I have a lot of experience in my own journey of healing and awakening. And in this experience, I've seen how common it is for people to uncover in their own courageous, heroic healing journey, how common it is for them to uncover trapped memories of things from childhood that they didn't even know existed. They had blocked out, forgotten, 50, 60-year-old person, and suddenly they have a traumatic memory come to them in their work with me. I've done a lot of ayahuasca. I've drank a lot of ayahuasca. I've done 40 ceremonies. And in those ceremonies, there were so many people who uncovered old horrific memories. And in talking to the shamans, this was very common. And the memory specific that is common that I'm pointing to is the memory of sexual trauma. So when people uncover sexual trauma, it is obviously very shocking, very shocking. And it's life-changing. I mean, it can't not change your life to have a memory come to you of being sexually abused by your father or your mother or a relative or a babysitter. It transforms your life. And it does so internally, obviously, but it also changes your life externally as well. I mean, your relationships with your relationship, obviously, if it's your father or your mother who sexually abused you and they're still alive and you're in regular contact with them, that's obviously going to change now to some degree because you've had this memory come. But it doesn't have to be, relationships with them that change. It can be a relationship with your partner, with your colleagues. Your work direction can change. So it's really dramatic to have something that big unearthed in you. It really does send ripples in all directions of your life. And I mean, just from the fact alone that it can take a long time to recover from that emotionally and physically. So it is no small thing to say the least, to uncover a memory like that. And naturally, when we're hit with the shock, we go into a state of denial. We say or we think, no, this can't possibly have happened. No, there's no way they would have done that to me. There's no way she would have done that to me or he. they loved me, and they were generally good to me. How could they have possibly done that? And so it's very natural, it's very normal. And denial is, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who's no longer alive, created these stages of grief, and denial was one of those stages. And what comes after denial, in my experience and in my own personal experience of healing, is if we can get past the denial, we then confront anger or rage. We are confronted with this red hot energy, and when that anger, that rage takes hold of us, we're now opening more to truth. We're opening more to the possibility that this actually happened, or we're just opening to the fact that it did happen. So truth starts to come in more fully when we feel these hot energy. So anger is often referred to as red hot energy, and that's why I'm calling it that. And and one of the voices of anger within this particular context is, how dare you? So anger or rage often wants to scream, how dare you? How fucking dare you? How dare you do that to me? And if we can get through that rite of passage of anger, of rage, then you know what comes next. It's the sadness, it's the grief. And that's where the truth hits home even more deeply. That's where we feel the magnitude more deeply. And that's where we heal more deeply, is when the grief really is felt in the heart. And if anyone is interested, I've written an article called Your Heart is Designed to Grieve, and you can find that on my website. You may find that helpful. So it is such a huge monumental thing to uncover this memory. And something I also want to say to you is that sexual trauma, and I've mentioned this in other videos, sexual trauma is very common. At last I heard 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys have been sexually abused. And I was talking to a woman in a position of authority who knows about this subject matter, and she said that actually she heard it was 1 in 3 girls. Or she might have meant 1 in 3 children, but she said 1 in 3. So it is such a dark, shadowy aspect of our civilization, of the Western world, that we talk about and yet we don't talk about. It's a dark underbelly that is not spoken about enough, and yet we are talking about it more. So I also want to say this, and that is, so when you walk down the street, when you go down the sidewalk, go to the store, go to the bank, you are walking by a lot of people who have been sexually abused. And some of them know that they've been sexually abused, and a lot of them don't. A lot of them have no idea. And that's just something to keep in mind, is when you walk down the street, you are walking past so many people who've been sexually violated. And so the ones, in particular the ones who haven't uncovered, well, actually both. It depends on how much healing work either group has done, but you're walking by people who are suppressing a lot. They're suppressing a lot of trauma, and that's true in general. It doesn't have to be sexual trauma. It can be all sorts of trauma. It can be physical abuse that's not sexually related, which includes spanking. It can include very difficult birth traumas, neglect. Neglect is very hard on children. And it can be traumas that are later in life. It can be something to do with loss, death, accidents. So people are carrying a lot, and they're also carrying the trauma from their ancestry and also from their many, many lifetimes, their karmic imprints that they're working through in this lifetime. So people are carrying a heavy load. And when we really know that, when we really get how much people are carrying, it really makes it harder to judge people. Even if someone gets angry at you or reactive, for me as a professional and as someone who's walked this journey for a long time, I generally don't take it personally. I see it as pain acting out. It's really their stuff, and I do my best to not judge and to have compassion. So here's where I begin to tie it into what's happening in the world today. People that have suppressed that much truth in their system, people who have had to cope and survive by keeping that much at bay, that much truth at bay in the shadows, in the dark, they often have a hard time discerning, sensing, feeling into what's real and what's not real outside of themselves. So another way of saying this is when I am defended against my own truth, my own difficult truth, when I'm defended against it, I am more likely to defend perceived truths that are external to me, but that are actually not truth at all, that are not true at all. They just seem true because I'm having a hard time discerning truth from fiction. And so when I can't feel into my truth and I'm defended against it, I can be more easily manipulated by false truths outside of me. I'm more likely to defend truth even if it is out to harm me. So what's happening in the world right now is we have millions and millions, if not billions, of people defending false truth. They're defending multiple narratives that are ultimately about harming the masses. And I'm guessing you know what I'm talking about, right? What this pandemic is about. Because the government, and it's ultimately the secret government, those above the government, they created this global pandemic. They created it, and they also have created the so-called medical solution that they are doling out en masse. And if I'm having a hard time feeling into my dark truth, it's going to be hard for me to feel into the truth within the darkness of those who supposedly have our best interests at heart. And I'm hoping this all makes sense to you. I've said it multiple times because it's important you really take your time feeling into what I'm saying, the gravity of what I'm saying, because there is a direct relationship between what I feel, what my experience is inside as I've contextualized it, and how I am perceiving things outside of me. And of course, this is all very dangerous. It is all very dangerous. So people are putting themselves in dangerous positions because of a high level of ignorance and a high level of naivety. They just don't know. So another way to look at this is that the more you know the truth within, the more you go in and you clear out all the stuff that's in the way of truth, and you go into those hard truths and you confront them and you feel them, it just becomes more obvious what's happening in the world. Just like for someone who's done a lot of their healing work, it's easier just to read people. We have an inner sensitivity that comes from healing, from sensitizing to our own pain and struggles. And that sensitivity translates outward to being able to sense, to feel into what people are saying. It could be a friend, it could be a colleague, it could be a client. It's like they're saying one thing, but I'm feeling another. I'm sensing that because I've learned in my own healing journey to sense what's going on in me, to feel into it. But because we're a society that doesn't like to feel and doesn't like to heal, we struggle to feel into what's actually going on. So deny the truth within, we deny the truth outside of ourselves. Now let's go a little bit further in our understanding of this. So for children to survive that level of adversity, sexual trauma, they do a few things. One is they suppress the memory. Okay, not always. Again, not all people have suppressed their memory of sexual trauma from childhood. A lot of people have a memory of it, do recall it. But in the case of people who don't remember, they don't remember because they suppressed it. They suppressed what happened. The other thing that they suppress is they suppress their emotions related to that experience, or if it was more than once, those experiences. And they also create a narrative in their mind at that young age. On some level, they say to themselves, well, it's not that bad, or it's no big deal. So they normalize what happens. They normalize it. See, if I say it's not so bad, what actually happens then, the benefit of that is that I don't have to feel the bad associated with the bad things that are happening. Again, so much of coping is about ensuring we don't feel that much. It's mitigation of feeling, mitigating feeling, so we don't get overwhelmed. Children do not have the capacity to self-regulate. And so because of that, they just have to suppress it all. It's that overwhelming. So the other thing that children do to cope is they blame themselves. They'll, on some level, say, it's my fault, I am bad, I am wrong. They will self-blame and self-shame because they don't want to put the blame on their parents. Let's just assume it's the parents. It's too devastating. It would be too devastating for them to put the blame on their parents because they need their parents to survive. They need to believe that their parents are loving, are trustworthy, are safe. Children are so attachment driven. The secure bond, the secure attachment is so essential to their survival. And so they need to blame themselves because they can't tarnish the image of their parents. And so children have an image of infallibility. They hold that image of infallibility of their parents because, again, they have to make themselves the ones that's at fault. So parents are off the hook. I'm the one at fault, and that is self-shame and that's self-blame. So it's my fault, I am bad, I'm the worst, I am wrong. These beliefs are so ubiquitous to our society. They're so common. And this is a big reason why. It's a big reason why. So by blaming themselves and not seeing their parents as being at fault and holding this godlike image of them, what children are doing is they're not seeing things for how it really is. They're seeing things for how they need it to be. They're not seeing things for how it actually is, the truth. They're seeing things for how they need it to be. They need to see it as their fault to survive, and they can't see the truth that it's actually their parents' fault. So this is a big thing to understand. It's so important you understand this fundamental point here, because this ties into what's happening in the world. Because the world is full of so many traumatized people with that survival adaptation. So many. And this is not just from sexual trauma. This is from having experienced neglect or physical abuse that wasn't sexually related, such as being beaten with a shoe or a belt or a steel rod. These things happen more than people realize. And so children in those contexts as well, to survive, see things not as they actually are, but how they need them to be. And so if we fast forward into adulthood, what we have now is a world full of people with that survival adaptation who are seeing, again, think of the context of the pandemic, they're seeing things not as they actually are, but how they need it to be or want it to be. This is the key piece here. They're not seeing things for how they actually are. They're seeing things for how they want it to be or need it to be. They're not tuning in to the dark agenda. They're not tuning in to the truths that are hidden behind the generally accepted truths. They're not discerning. They are caught in deception. They're caught in manipulation because they deceived themselves when they were children. They lied to themselves. They had to lie to themselves to survive. And so now they don't see the lie outside of themselves because they're spending too much time seeing things for how they actually are not. Another way to look at this is that we have our parents from childhood, but we have our governmental parental body, the big parents. Okay, so we now, to survive that adversity, well, we adapt, we have an infallible image of our parents in childhood, but now what we do is we project that out onto the nefarious players, the secret government, and we hold them with a level of infallibility. We hold them, we don't hold them responsible. We don't say, well, you're the one who's doing this. You're the one ultimately who's causing all this. We don't do that because we're applying the same survival adaptation from childhood to our government. I'm hoping this makes sense to you. It's not actually easy to explain, but I'm hoping you understand. This is so pervasive, it's so insidious, it's so deep. It really does deceive people. You know, again, I've said this before, trauma is known as the eternally present past because our rapidly developing nervous system and brain is wired in such a way that it really creates deception. It really creates self-deception. And so we do struggle later in life feeling into the truth of things. We struggle feeling into the truth of things also because it's not safe to feel when we're a child, so we shut off our feelings. And then adults are terrified of feeling, and if they're afraid to feel, then how well are they going to be able to feel into what's not being said? So it's a whole bunch of factors that are at play that are causing people to be so deceived and being harmed. Being harmed. Being genetically modified. Everyone, genetically modified. And this is all just going to get worse. It's all going to intensify. And having said all that, everyone, having said what I've just said, I have to also say from a higher perspective, because it is my job, it is my role to bring the very human, raw perspective as I've just done, but it's also my role, my job to bring in a higher spiritual perspective. And the higher spiritual perspective is this needs to happen. This pandemic. The dark players are playing an important role right now, an evil role, a corrupt role. But they're playing a role right now in catalyzing a rebirth that needs to happen, because we've long been a very sick society. We've long been a very sick society, and that just needs to end now. We need to end the cycles of abuse. My clients, what they went through, so many of them, was just unbelievable what they've gone through. But their parents usually had it worse, and their parents had it even more worse. So we have long been living with normalized chronic dysfunction, chronic abuse. It's been a lot for me to take in. It's been a lot of research, a lot of gathering of information about the dark underbelly of society. So given the history, the dark history, and given that the amount of suffering on the planet, Mother Earth, the air, the soil, the water, the way animals are treated, they're tortured and turned into food. We feed that food to our kids. The insanity, it's not hard to find, given all that so much of which we call normal. It has to stop. It has to stop. We just can't keep going with this level of denial. It's this level of denial that's causing that much dysfunction. It's causing so many health crises. It's causing so much pain, so much dependency on toxic medication, so much dependency on a corrupt system. And it needs to end. And so there is a blessing in what's going on right now. And it's a very harsh rite of passage, what we're going through, but it's a necessary rite of passage, because there's a blessing. And the blessing is that it is catalyzing the light in us. It is catalyzing us into empowerment, into waking up. But for now, it's just going to get worse. There's going to be more chaos. So it's both. There's the higher perspective and the lower perspective, the human perspective. I also want to say we're struggling. Millions and millions, if not billions of people are struggling to discern, because discernment ultimately comes from the truth of our soul. We have light and we have truth. We're love, light, and truth. And that light is information. That light gives us truth. And it's from that truth, from knowing the truth of our soul, that we discern truth outside of ourselves. Truth discerns truth. Truth from fiction. But I don't know many people, in fact, I don't know anyone who was supported as a child to be true to themselves. I mean, for most people, it was actually a threat to be true to themselves. They were taught on many levels as children that they were either too much or not enough. So it became unsafe to be who we are. and we adapted. We became who we needed to be: pleasing, accommodating, nice, smart, achievement-driven, athletic. We became who we needed to be to make sure mommy and daddy were happy with us. And so I don't know many people who were encouraged to be true to themselves and where it was safe for them to be true to themselves. But the thing is this, is if we're going to feel into and know the truth within our soul, remember that's the truth that discerns truth ultimately. If we're going to tune into that truth, we need to be true to ourselves. That just is common sense. If I'm going to tune into the truth of my soul, I have to be true to me. But given that not many people in the Western world were encouraged to be true to themselves, also because the school system didn't make that all too easy, if not many people were encouraged and supported to be true to themselves, then you're going to have a whole bunch of people who are going to have a hard time to discern truth from fiction. And so I'm giving you just more context, more context. So we're a people that need to heal. We're a people that need to feel. We are people that need to know that it's safe to be ourselves and it's safe to discern. I invite you all right now to close your eyes and just imagine for a moment that you are holding a sword, a big sword, and that this sword is the sword of discernment. We often associate discernment with the metaphor of the sword. And so I invite you in your imagination to picture this powerful sword of any color you like, whatever color feels good to you. Feel its weight. Feel the weight of this sword. Feel its potency. Feel its desire to pierce through falsity, nonsense, bullshit. To pierce right through the illusions that we are being fed through the media day after day. Know that you have a right to discern. You have a right to wield that sword. You have a right to be you, for you are that sword. It is safe, everyone. I invite you to consider it is safe to be you. It is safe to discern, and therefore it is safe to be you. And if that's too much to take in as much as you can. Take in that maybe it's a little bit safer now to be you. It's a little bit safer to discern. It's safer to wield that sword and to know truth from fiction. So this is a huge step in our evolution, in our spiritual maturity, is being able to wield that sword, being able to know that we have a right to do that. Remember, it as children, it wasn't safe. It wasn't safe to know truth. Truth would have been devastating. And so you can imagine how many people in our world don't feel safe to discern. And therefore, their sword is in the sheath. It's there, but they're not using it. And so I'm inviting you now to pull that out and to get to know that sword, to explore it, and to ultimately use it. I also want to suggest to you that as an added resource, you consider reading a book. It's a sacred text called the Sophia Code. And this book will also help you to discern. And it's made a huge difference in my life. It's redirected my life. And I don't get any royalties by suggesting this book to you, but it's the most important book I've ever read, the Sophia Code. It's translated in French, in case you want to read it in French. And basically you work with these ascended masters. There's many beings in the universe. We're not the only ones. And there's some very advanced beings called ascended masters who are here to help us, especially at this time when we need as much help as we can get. And I mentor with them. And this book really is, it's a rite of passage, and it initiates you into a relationship with these ascended masters, so that you can work with them and they can support you. And the book is also very powerful in terms of helping you heal and helping you open to your soul. So I recommend the Sophia Code as an added resource on top of connecting to your own soul, your own higher self. I also invite you to consider, if you want to heal or want to continue your healing, working with me. I don't need your business, but I offer this to you because the starlight that I transmit is made for these times. It's advanced technology, and it was taught to me by these beings of light that came to me in multiple plant medicine ceremonies. And I have a video on my YouTube channel. It's actually the feature video in which I go into my story of them coming to me, and there's client testimonials. I just offer this to you as another avenue to accelerate your path of healing and awakening, because healing these trauma imprints that again are much bigger than this lifetime, it's no small thing. We really deserve to heal. We really deserve to heal. We deserve to stand tall in our power, in our dignity, in our worth, in our integrity. We have a right to be true to ourselves. And again, as we're true to ourselves, we will exercise our right to know truth, and to see beyond all that's false, to see beyond all that's false that's coming at us right now through the media. So that is my long video for you, and I hope it was helpful. And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please share. Please leave your comments. Click notifications as well if you'd like to get notifications for when I publish another video. And yeah, and feel free to send me an email if you have any questions. I have lots of information on my website, and I have lots of other videos as well on my channel right now that may also be of support to you. So from my heart to yours, I send you my love, and I wish you well on this very courageous, heroic journey that you're on right now through this global rite of passage that we are on. Thanks, everyone.